When I was in Tokyo this last trip, I dropped by Japan Camera Hunter's office to pick up this all new to me Leica M1. Not only that, but Tim picked up a very nice black mini lux. I'll show you some photos from his camera as well as my camera from this video, although they will mostly be from the Leica M1. If you're not familiar with Japan Camera Hunter, his name is Bellamy, and well, he keeps great stock of film cameras, lenses, and accessories on the JCH website. He can also find you whatever camera you might be after. I'm a sucker for a green paint, and when I saw this Leica M1 listed, I figured it was time. So we picked the camera up, and then we had a bit of a weird day to celebrate. It included baseball, Outback Steakhouse, and capybara. I also took one of my favorite images of all time with this Leica M1. It was actually a test shot, which is why it is so underexposed, but I love it. The Leica M1 is an often overlooked member of the M family. This is a screenshot of the Wikipedia page. There's pretty much nothing there. And you might say, it's the first one of the M line. Why don't people want it? Well, it's not. The Leica M3 was released first, then the M2, then finally the M1 in 1959. While there were reported 220,000 M3s that were made, only 9,431 M1s were made. It was the lowest cost and the most simple Leica M body. Basically, it was a simplified M2 without a rangefinder. It was intended to be used for scientific and medical work.
It doesn't have a rangefinder patch because it is zone focus. Yeah. So this is a much more simple version of a Leica because it's not really the same as an M3 and M4 and so on.
Not having a rangefinder means that it won't actually show you what's in focus when you look through the viewfinder, and all of your focusing is done by distance markings or zone focusing on the lens. If you're bad at guessing distances like I am, you can have your friend load up the measurement tool on your phone and let you know where to focus. Thanks, Tim, for this assist on this Godzilla manhole cover. I think we really nailed it. While this camera is not a rangefinder, it does correct for parallax, which is pretty cool. Parallax is how your frame lines change as you go from minimum focus distance out to maximum. The frame lines inside the M1 will actually move to show you your frame as it actually will be on the film. There is no light meter, which also means there's no battery. It's fully mechanical. And I'm getting better at knowing which exposure is correct in what scenes with different ISO film, but I usually still verify the exposure when I'm changing environments. You can either get a proper meter or a new age hot shoe meter like I have here on my M4 II. One of these meters, just go on your hot shoe and let you know what the exposure should be, or you can use an app on your phone, which is actually what I do. It's not the most mechanical analog experience, and it's definitely goes against the principles of this camera, but it's very convenient and surprisingly accurate. Most M1s have a permanent frame line for 35 and 50 millimeters in the viewfinder, but my M1 is a little bit different. It's the German military version, so my frame lines are actually 50 millimeters and 135 inside the camera, which is pretty unique. I'm a big fan of this. The 50 millimeter frame markings sit very comfortably in the viewfinder and make this camera really easy to use. With my M1, as well as many other M1s that are on the market, it came with this Elmar 5cm f3.5 collapsible lens. 5 centimeters is the equivalent of 50 millimeters. And you pull it out and you twist it to lock it in place. My original thought was that I was going to use this lens for this trip, and then once I got back home, I was going to switch back to my 50 millimeter Summicron. But after seeing the images, I am going to be continuing to shoot this lens a lot because I am very, very impressed. Also, a shout out to our friend Panda Plush in Kitchener, Ontario for the development and scanning of these frames, which came out very nice. I guess I also got some of the hand-rolled film from him as well. Thanks, Panda. And as you'd expect, the M1 fits any M lenses that you might have. You just use the side button here to disconnect the lens. You put on whatever M mount lens you want. But I now recommend getting the one that comes with most of the M1s because it's really, really nice. Now, I said that this particular M1 is a little bit special. The best I can tell is only 158 of these green units were manufactured, 75 in 1961 and 83 in 1964. And apparently it's worth a lot more than I paid for it if it's still in its original form. On top of this camera, you will see 5 plus 13.5 markings, which corresponds to the frame lines. And the top plate is from the original MP, which kind of makes it look like an olive MP rather than an olive painted M1. The olive paint was also exclusive to the military in the M1, the M3, the M4, but due to its huge civilian demand, Leica finally started manufacturing green versions of their cameras in 1977, the Leica R3, and a lot of Leica cameras are still manufactured to this date in green, and they're called Safari Editions. The M1 is a single stroke camera, which means just want to advance the next frame. On the top of the camera, you have a frame counter that it does advance automatically, but you have to manually zero it out if you go onto a new roll, or sometimes it remains accurate if you're shooting 36 exposure film rolls. On the shutter speed dial, you have bulb mode, 1 second, and then all the way to 1/1000 of a second. It also comes with my favorite style of film rewind knob. To rewind the film, first you flip the film release lever on the front here, and then you pop this wheel up and you spin it until the film is back in the canister. The shutter also just feels really nice and rewarding. I find myself using this camera around the house with no film in it just because I want to hear the noise of the shutter. It's kind of dumb, but I guess it's a testament to how fun this camera is to use. I read a fair bit about the M1 before deciding to get one, and it was a bit weird to see some articles suggesting to avoid this camera entirely. And honestly, after using one for a week, I'm not sure why. It's a really enjoyable experience that is familiar and enjoyable, but with an additional element of focusing by distance and a fun game of guessing exposures. To focus, you use this little lever on the side of the lens here. You press it down to unlock it from infinity, and then you spin it to your desired distance. The 5cm Elmar had me a little bit worried about how close the focus distance markings are apart. When you're at 1 meter, it's a bit far from 1.1 meters, which is only another 10 centimeters, and then the same with 1.2 meters. It seemed like if something at 1 meter is going to be in focus, the 1.1 meters is going to be completely gone. But in my experience, as long as you are pretty close, the focus was pretty forgiving. I was shooting usually around either wide open f3.5 or maybe stop down to f8. As you get past 5 meters, the markings start to get a lot closer, and the helpful f-stop tool on the top of the lens here is what I use to make sure that I am in focus from whatever the closest subject is to infinity. As I said, I spent a lot of my time wide open at f3.5, and to my surprise, only a few out of focus images, and they're mostly just user error not extending the barrel as long as I should. Overall, the learning curve of this camera is pretty short. On the back of the camera, you have 2 flash options, old time flash and new time flash. Your flash sync speed is up here on your shutter speed dial, and it is 1/50th of a second. It also has this really nice dial on the back here to remind yourself what film is in the camera, whether it is daylight or tungsten or black and white, and what ISO it is. Loading this camera is a little bit different from the later version Leica film cameras, and you have to push the film into this spool and then load the film in as normal. There's a nice little graphic on the bottom that I think was drawn by Otto Dix, the original emo kid. And yes, I had to look up German painters that were alive during this time period to make that joke.
Because it's so basic and it's so simple, it's probably going to last longer than I do. You know?
So no battery, no meter?
Nope, nothing.
Just camera?
Just pure camera, and very pure because as again, it's the zone focus system. So you really are very much back to basics with this thing. It's a learning experience, but it's a fun learning experience, which is relatable if you've handled a Leica before, which I know you have.
The shooting experience with this camera is really enjoyable and uncomplicated. And maybe this sounds ridiculous to anyone that grew up shooting film cameras without meters, but not having a light meter requires a little bit more thinking when making your exposure, and it's kind of a fun game. It's rewarding when you get it right. Thanks to Japan Camera Hunter for this camera, and Tim's Leica Mini Lux. I'll see you again next time. If you have any questions, I feel like I covered it all. It's a very simple camera, so hopefully no further questions. See you next time.